We're going to be looking at Job chapter 41 today and considering leviathan. Now, leviathan is something that you probably won't see in the zoo today. It's not something you'll have as a pet, but it was, as far as I can tell, something that was in existence during the time that God was speaking to Job through the whirlwind, which we know is the angelic ministry. So Job is here, as we talked about yesterday. He is just awestruck at the power and might that God is describing about himself through his word. Job has been righteous. We know that from chapter 1. Job has declared himself innocent. He doesn't know why this is happening. He doesn't fully understand the accuser of the brethren in the mix. And so everybody's blaming him for claiming to be self-righteous. The three friends wouldn't speak, and finally the last guy, I don't remember his name. Eliud? No, I don't remember. Anyways, he comes up and he starts speaking and sharing that, Job, you're not righteous. I'm the one that God has sent. Listen to me. And then God comes in and starts really just bringing down the power of who he is and what he can do. And so we're going to look at that now, trying to understand a little bit more of who God is and what he can do. And it says in Job 41, verse 1, can you draw out Leviathan with a hook? Now, remember we talked about before where God was seeming to bring up some things that are funny in one of the previous chapters. He does that, it seems, in this chapter too. Now here it's like the answer is, no, Leviathan? Absolutely not. Who is Leviathan? What does the Hebrew Strong's Dictionary say about Leviathan? It's from this one here. You can look at that for yourself, but it's a wreathed animal. So one that is twisted, one that is wreathed, circled around, one that is a serpent, especially the crocodile or some other large sea monster. And so we talked about this before. Remember, with the former behemoth, the Hebrew was saying it's more like a hippopotamus. Well, this one's saying it's more like a crocodile. Okay, but they're not describing in chapter 40 or 41 a hippopotamus or a crocodile. Maybe a really big crocodile, but we'll see. Figuratively, it's the constellation of the dragon, also the symbol of Bab. It's Leviathan, also translated morning. Now, this word is actually used more than one time. You can go ahead and find it by just right-clicking and searching either the key number or the word. I'm going to choose the key number because Job chapter 3, verse 8, it's talking about Leviathan in the first chapter or the first section of that book. And then you can see it's talked about in Psalms as well. Thou breakest the heads, plural, of Leviathan in pieces. Oh, wait a minute. Heads? That's interesting. So Leviathan maybe has more than one head, kind of like the seven-headed dragon? I'm not sure. But it does talk about heads. So there goes the ships, right? There is that Leviathan. So the ships are together with Leviathan. Remember, the behemoth was made with the man. It wasn't made before or after the man. And so here the ships are in the sea, and there's Leviathan, and whom thou hast made to play with, or play therein. And so it's Isaiah 27, where Leviathan is referred to as the piercing serpent. Remember, we talked about the behemoth being able to pierce through the snares. Well, here, it's kind of the same thing. In that day the Lord with his sword, a sore and great sword, shall punish Leviathan, the piercing serpent, even Leviathan, that crooked serpent, and he shall slay the dragon that is in the sea. So the Leviathan and the dragon, those are different words, because remember we looked up this purple word here in the Hebrew, but the dragon is a word that's used in concert with Leviathan. So dragon, Leviathan, those are the same thoughts, because this is here talking about with a strong sword punishing Leviathan and then slaying the dragon. And so it's, again, Hebrew poetry that's going through those same thoughts. So now going back to Job chapter 40, verse 1, can you draw out Leviathan with a hook? And the answer is no. I mean, a lot of these answers that God is asking Job is just plain no. Or his tongue with a cord, which thou lettest down. Now a cord, we talk about fishing line. We don't normally fish with a cord, okay? A cord, what is this? This is a rope a twisted, especially a measuring line. So something that is not just a thin, it's a thin like fishing line. It's a band, a cord, it's a destruction or a line, something that can bring pain, a rope, tackling. Okay, like so you've got tackle for your fish, but this is more, I think, of a stronger word than the normal fishing line. Now, I don't know what normal fishing line would sound like in the Bible, except that they do have nets, but this one is just a cord, not a net. Verse 2, canst thou put a hook into his nose? Obviously, the answer is no. Or can you bore his jaw through with a thorn? Like, I've actually gone fishing quite a bit in my past experience, and one of the things that we did once in Idaho, I was with my uncle, is we were fishing sturgeon. Now, one of the ways that we saw the sturgeon is, and these are like 5 and 6 foot, maybe 7 foot fish. They're quite large. They're red with some black highlights. And the way that you knew that they were there is you'd see the water like stirring. I'm here in Texas right now, and I was actually yesterday doing some drone video, and I saw a section of water that was stirring, and I wondered what that was. And I realized that it was actually some kind of animal that had moved, and it had caught my eye. When I looked, I saw the water stirring, and I thought, what is that? But then I saw the animal next to it. That's a little different than when I was hunting the sturgeon. The sturgeon would actually cause their back to shake, and it would cause the water around them to ripple. Okay, so it was like a vibrating fish, if you will. All the water would ripple, and you could see like the spray coming up a little bit. And there you knew was a sturgeon. You could also see their fin. It was almost like a dragon's back. Now that I'm talking about it, it makes it sound like this kind of leviathan, but it wasn't a wreathed dragon-like. It was a very long fish. You can look up sturgeon if you want to, but in Idaho, that is, red and black. But this black fin would stick up, and it would just stay there with that fin. Now, why would it stay there with that fin? Well, first it was getting the attention of whatever's around it because it's stirring the water, and then it's got this fin sticking up, and you're thinking, what's it doing? Well, a bird might come by and be like, what is that? And drop down and land right next to it, and then the sturgeon would be able to grab it or whatever it's doing to hunt, right? It's kind of a trick. Anyways, what we would do with a bow and arrow. Now, this is a little bit different because you don't have an arrow that's detached from the bow. You have a bow and then a rope or a cord that is connected to the bow, and also it's run through the back of the arrow so that when you release it, it's the cord or rope is long enough for when it goes into the ground, you'll be able to pull it back out and you won't lose an arrow every time you shoot, right? Well, that's genius, okay? I was just maybe, 13, 14 years old when I was doing this. But we caught several of those fish. Now, why we caught them, I have no idea, because the guy that I was with, my uncle, he was vegetarian at the time. So I suppose, I don't remember what we did. We may have given them to somebody else. But we would release that arrow, and we would shoot kind of down under the fin, of course, that was sticking up, and it would capture that fish, and we'd be able to reel it in. Now, that was pretty intense because a 5 or 6 foot fish can really pull behind, the other direction away from where you're trying to get it to go. But I can't imagine something as what is described in chapter 41, Leviathan. I can't imagine trying to do that with a cord and a bow, right? Because you're just going to be launched right off the boat if it starts pulling on you. So can you put a hook into his nose or bore his jaw through with a thorn? Will he make many supplications unto you? And this is where I think God is being a little bit funny here. Will he make supplication unto you? Is he going to ask your permission? And so earnestly pray to you? Is he going to entreat on your behalf? Absolutely not. Will he speak soft words unto you? It's like, I can imagine Job laughing okay, Leviathan asking me for permission, making supplication to me and speaking soft words, whispering in my ear? Absolutely not. Will he make a covenant with you? Can you agree with him on something? No. And Job, remember, has already gone through such a difficult time. It sounds like God is causing him or bringing him to laugh again, like we talked about before. Will he make a covenant, an agreement? This word right here is a pact, a compact by passing between two pieces of flesh, like what happened with Abraham, a confederacy or a league, some kind of covenant, like an agreement. Will you take him for a servant forever? Well, no, you can't train Leviathan. You're not going to teach him what to do. And hey, can animals really talk like a man? Laugh out loud, that's funny. And no, obviously not. But that's the idea, is that we're seeing God is bringing this stuff up, right? And it won't be a servant, somebody who you can just say, hey, go get my paper for me and bring it back to me. No, you can't train them like a dog. Verse 5, wilt thou play with him as with a bird? Now, why a bird? Well, we've seen some flying fish, haven't we? There is such a thing if you look it up online. They only fly for a short time, but they can fly. Why would God ask, can you play with him as with a bird? Is it the obvious no? Or is it that perhaps Leviathan might fly as a bird? I'm not sure. I'm going to have to ask in heaven, because I just don't understand. But the question is, at least worth asking. Will you bind him for your maidens? He's laughing like, no, of course not. I can't bring it up and say, hey, look, show and tell, look at what I caught. I caught a Leviathan today. And they're screaming because they're afraid, right? So Wilson, you want to share?
As you're going to continue to describe this Leviathan, and I like to suggest that because Job was a king, second king of Edom, God is speaking to a king of a nation. And the Leviathan is describing a contemporary nation, which is the nation of Egypt. Job is one generation earlier than Moses, and during that time, Egypt was the most powerful nation. Can Job's nation, the nation of Edom, contend with Egypt? He cannot. But God can put a hook in the nose of the Leviathan, which is why throughout the scripture, it talks about the dragon Leviathan is describing Egypt, as well as the Nile River, the Red Sea that God led his people through. That was the hook that the Lord put in the Leviathan's nose. That's why it's so personified about Leviathan.
Yeah, good. No, I like that, because I totally agree. I've seen the connection between Egypt and Leviathan, and I like what you're saying. I hadn't put that together in my mind before, but I think that's definitely worth looking at. Now, I also believe Leviathan was a real creature. I also think that Behemoth was a real creature. And could it be applied this way that you're talking? Yes, absolutely. I think it's probably one of the better applications. But we're going to go today as well through this idea, because I haven't studied what you're talking about, but I'm going to go through the idea as though it's just a real creature as well. Okay? So thank you for sharing. Now, so can you bind him for your maidens? Shall the companions make a banquet of him? And so you're not going to be able to catch Leviathan and actually make a feast out of him. He's just too powerful, too big. Shall they part him among the merchants? Are you going to sell him in the shop down the road? No, absolutely not, because you can't catch him to begin with. Verse 7, can you fill his skin with barbed irons? And the answer is no, you can't fill his skin with our barbed irons like I have done with those sturgeon fish. I had what was called a barbed iron, or you could consider a barbed iron, during the time that I was fishing many years ago there in Idaho. But you can't fill his skin. Why not? Can you fill his head with fish spears? No, he's not a fish. This guy's a dragon, right? Lay your hand upon him. Remember the battle and do no more. So you're not going to be able to wrestle this big beast. And, like Wilson was saying, certainly Egypt, you couldn't just grab Egypt and pin him down and then just treat him as though he's some kind of animal that you can disperse among those that are nearby. No, absolutely not. But here, this Leviathan creature in the water is certainly not somebody that you can just go and grab and then think later like, man, I took care of him. Oh no, you will remember the battle and not do it again. Behold, the hope of him is in vain. Shall not one be cast down even at the sight of him? So absolutely, this guy right here is powerful. Now, remember, God is the one that actually made this creature. Just like he made Behemoth and the sword to fight Behemoth, God is the one that made Leviathan. God is the one that can control every single thing. And so when we're looking at this idea of God being so powerful that only he can save Job, the whole idea in the book of Job is righteous from the onset. That's why the whole universe is looking at him. Job is claiming righteousness by his own words. He's saying, I haven't done this, I haven't done that. I am doing this, I am doing that. I'm walking with God, I don't know what's happening. I don't understand. And his friends are like, you're just claiming righteousness because you shouldn't be. You're just as wicked as everybody. Look at yourself. God isn't unjust as though he's doing this wrongly to you. You're obviously wicked. That's why you're going through these things. And so Job is saying, I'm not unrighteous. I'm not wicked. And God is saying, you can't save yourself, Job. You're right. Even God doesn't say, point out specific sins of Job. Job is saying, listen, I don't understand. That's why I'm not speaking up. I spoke up twice. I'm not doing it again. He realizes I don't know what to say, but I'm not unrighteous. And I think another application to this idea is God is so big that only God can control everything. God can save Job. God can treat him as though he's redeemed. He cannot save himself. In the midst of all his righteousness, he still cannot control everything. And God has given him the visual understanding of using Behemoth and Leviathan. Only God can do this. God is big enough to not only create, but to also control. And so I like this too, in that we have this idea of God being so powerful that hoping in something like Leviathan is in vain. But hoping in God, there's all sorts of room there. Shall not one be cast down even at the sight of him? None is so fierce that dare stir him up. Just leave him alone. Another comment here. It says from Matt and Nikki, we cannot save ourselves from the Leviathan, which is Satan. Only God can. Absolutely. And there is a connection between Satan and Egypt and Leviathan as well. You can see that in the scripture. Just study the word itself and you'll find it. Who then is able to stand before me? So that's the question. That's where it comes down to. If Leviathan is so powerful, if Behemoth is so powerful, then who can stand before me? And Job is just humbled. Job has no answer. Job is now in his place. Even as a righteous man, he's still humbled, right? Verse 11. Who has gone before me that I should repay him? So now God is asking, kind of like the Leviathan, he's saying, who can restore to me what I've done, what I've paid for, what I've worked for? Nobody. I'm not going to repay anybody. Nobody has given me anything. Whatsoever is under the whole heaven is mine. God is the owner. God is the one. God has everything. Job, I've got this. Just keep trusting me. I will not conceal his parts, nor his power, nor his comely proportion. So God is not going to hide anything. He's going to reveal everything through the servants, the prophets, right? Like it says in Amos chapter 3. Who can discover the face of his garment? Would this be God's garment? Well, it sounds like it's going actually back into the idea of the Leviathan. Who can discover the face of his garment? So how do you discover what's covering Leviathan? You can't even catch him, right? Who can come to him with his double bridle? Not just a single bridle, a double bridle. This is one of the creatures that needs more than one bridle, one that's like double thick. Who can open the doors of his face? So the doors of his face would be like his mouth, right? His teeth are terrible round about. Now there is something interesting. I want to show it to you. It's this YouTube link here. And yesterday we talked about a video that was talking about Behemoth from Genesis Apologetics. That one we shared yesterday. This one is also a video that's talking about Leviathan. What was Leviathan in Job 41? And I think it's worth looking at. What we'll see is that there's a lot of visuals, a lot of thoughts there that I didn't write down everything and just mimic what they said. You can go and look at that yourself as well as kind of an additional homework to this. And you can see some of the stuff that is described. But here it's talking about if this creature is as big as they think it is, some of the archaeological findings, etc., that they're saying that their teeth are like bananas. Okay, that's one of the things I do remember from that video. And so this is a big creature here, and they're suggesting that looks kind of like the large, very large alligator or crocodile. And I'm not sure because I don't have a picture here in the King James Version, but it is described and it sure could fit, but I'm not positive. Verse 14, who can open the doors of his face? His teeth are terrible round about. His scales are his pride. So he does have scales, like a fish, if you will, and they shut up together as with a close seal or close seal. So they're shut up, they're sealed, it's close, they're together. It's not like you can just reach in from behind one of his scales and pierce his heart, right? He's pretty tight, he's close knit. One is so near to another that no air can come between them. Wow. So this guy is really like watertight. You can't just pierce a sword in between one of his scales and expect to be able to kill him that way. It's because he's airtight, right? They are joined one to another. So it's not like they're separated as a fish. I remember hunting those sturgeon. They did have scales, and you can like actually pull one scale away from the other. But this is joined to one another. They stick together. So now he's really emphasizing the fact that he's got some pretty good armor on him, that they cannot be sundered. You can't separate those scales. By his sneezing, which I don't know why they spelled it that way, but it's actually sneeze, okay? By his sneezing. So by his sneezing, a light doth shine. Wait a minute. He sneezes and there's a light? His eyes are like the eyelids of the morning. So his eyes are shining like the sun. Now, you've probably seen, so like armor, you've seen in the very depths of the ocean, there are some creatures that have those little tiny, almost like an antenna, if you will, that is right before them, and there's a light that shines there, right? Well, some of them have eyes that shine, or they can change different colors. Look those things up on the internet, like the depths of, what are they called? Somebody's going to know the term here. I can't remember the term. Luminescence, I don't remember. But some of those creatures way down in the depths actually have light. And here it's suggesting the eyes are bright, okay? And it sneezes and light comes forth. What does that mean, sneezing and light comes forth? There's eyes that are bright. Well, I think it's probably, looking at it as a real creature, it's got that kind of luminescence, that bioluminescence, I think is what it is. That's what it is. I think that's what it's called. And you can see that some of those things, okay, Vern says correct. I thought maybe, Vern, you could help me out. Some of those things you tend to know. And so by the sneezing at light, the light shines, his eyes are like the eyelids of the morning. Out of his mouth goes now burning lamps. It's not just lamps, they translated it burning lamps. So that's from a word to shine, a lamp or a flame, a firebrand, a burning lamp, a lightning, or a torch. Interesting, right? So out of his mouth goes burning lamps, and sparks of fire leap out. You're like, what? What are you talking about? Well, I couldn't find it right now. In the past, I have looked at some things where in the archaeological digs, they find some water creatures that have actually holes in their head. It's not that it comes out of their mouth necessarily, or their eyes, or their nose, but they and maybe this isn't the leviathan that's being described, but they've found the holes in the head of this creature, which is a water animal, long and thin and, able to swim fastly or quickly. They have found that there's like burn marks, almost like where there's somewhat of a chimney there out of the head. And it made a lot of sense to me when I was looking at Leviathan like 27 years ago, trying to understand this and looking at some of the things that I found with my mother there, describing it to me as well. So even in archaeology, to my recollection, I couldn't show it to you now because it's been so long, but maybe you can find it yourself as well. There are descriptions of animals that live in the water that actually would breathe fire, okay? So this stuff is pretty interesting. The more we learn, the more we understand. I'm going to be so very interested, like front row seat in heaven when God is sharing about all this stuff. I want to learn. I want to know what the purpose is, why these things happen, what God was trying to really explain or help us to understand. And so, yeah, it's fun. And so this is a fire-breathing dragon. That's why so many people in Asia, or, the Chinese kind of art, so often, so many times in Asia, they have dragons in their history, in their art, in their godlike descriptions that are dragons that breathe fire. And it just didn't come out of somebody's mind. This is what God was explaining to Job. And it's a dragon that breathes fire. The dragon was living in the waters, right? And so out of his nostrils goes smoke, as out of a seething pot or a cauldron. Now, a cauldron, it's like a marshy pool, by implication a rush. It's a rope of rushes, a cauldron, a hook, a bulrush. So imagine, I live in Georgia. There's a lot of humidity there. And so in the mornings, when you're looking at the open fields in front of the house there, you can see there's like mist coming up, right? It doesn't move so much, but it's like a cauldron, like a smoking pot, except the smoke doesn't move so much. It's just there, and it's like a thick mist. And I can imagine that that's kind of what is being described there as the cauldron. I remember my mother as a child, when I was a child, had a very large cauldron, and she would put black, or rather dry ice in it. You'd put water in there and then dry ice, and it would smoke very much like it was burning. It was really cool. But those are the kind of things that I'm imagining here. His breath kindles coals. Okay, his breath kindles coals. And a flame goes out of his mouth. Wow. So I was talking about the flames coming out of the top of the head of that one archaeological find that I can recall. But, only in my mind. But here, flames are going out of his mouth. So this is very much like the dragon that's being described in so much of the history and art of the Asians, right? In his neck remains strength. So his neck was really powerful. And sorrow is turned into joy before him. So sorrow turned into joy before him. I don't know why that is said right here. I don't understand that little phrase and why God would bring in some kind of human attribute. Sorrow turned into joy before him. I mean, being able to see him, maybe you're like, whoa, look at that, that's amazing. I don't know. So Wilson, go ahead.
You said Leviathan has multiple heads. So does the leopard in Daniel's prophecy. He had 4 heads. So does the dragon with 7 heads and 10 horns. And when Joseph was the prime minister of Egypt, being a father to Pharaoh, there was no food around. And when people went to Egypt, they received food. So sorrow is turned into joy. And that was just one generation before the generation of Job.
Oh, good. Thank you. That's a nice application too. Thank you. That's a good way to look at it. And from a historic perspective, I like that. That's good. In his neck remains strength, and sorrow is turned into joy before him. The flakes of his flesh are joined together. Now, the flakes would be similar to the scales, I would imagine, that are described up a few verses before. So the flakes of his flesh are joined together. They are firm in themselves. They cannot be moved. And so this is a real tough snake-like creature or dragon-like creature in the water. And it says, his heart is as firm as a stone. Now, I can just imagine that he's like a tough type of person. You know, there are types of people on the earth that actually have stronger and harder flesh than other people. And so I'm guessing that this animal has a harder flesh than other people as well. Yea, as hard as a piece of the nether millstone. Now, the nether millstone would be like the lowermost part, the one that has been down at the bottom of the pit for the longest. And it is definitely one that you would use for, like, how would you say, rolling over the olives to bring out the olive oil, etc. That's what the millstones were used for. You find that really hard rock, and that's what it was used for back in the day. But when he raises himself up, the mighty are afraid. So I guess you could say, in light of the Egyptians When they raise themselves up, everybody else is afraid. By reason of breakings, they purify themselves. So by reason of breakings, so I'm guessing that Leviathan is rising himself up, and he's breaking things. I don't know what he's breaking. Maybe he's breaking them because they're afraid. But by reason of breakings, they purify themselves. Why would they purify themselves? Well, they're getting ready to die. They know that it's the end because Leviathan has raised up, right? Verse 26. The sword of him that lays at him cannot hold, the spear, the dart, nor the hebergon. Now this right here is actually more like a mace that you would cover yourself with. It's a coat of mail. It's like a harness that you would put over yourself, a breastplate, and as if twisted, it's like what we would call a mace around your chest or something. He esteems iron as straw and brass as rotten wood. So you can't really, put him in a cage, that is, because he's just going to be able to break away from the cages that men make for this creature. The arrow cannot make him flee. Sling stones are turned with him into stubble. So if you threw a rock at him, the rock would break. Okay, this guy's really tough. Arrows don't work with him, so he's not like a sturgeon fish that I was fishing years ago. Darts are counted as stubble. He laughs at the shaking of a spear. So come on, guys, are you serious? You're going to throw that thing at me? Sharp stones are under him. He spreads sharp-pointed things upon the mire. Now, sharp stones under him. There are some fish that will actually eat coral, okay? And as they eat coral, it is digested through their system, and they put out what we know as sand, okay? So it could very well be that this Leviathan, being bigger, like a dog, being able to eat a bone and then swallow down the bone and then digest it and put that stuff out the backside, that's kind of like what I'm seeing here and trying to understand is that Leviathan could eat things that are spiky, that are, not like normal things that we would eat like a banana, but he's able to eat those things, and he puts those things out, and that they have spikes down below him because of what he's releasing. So I just think that that's pretty interesting. This guy's tough. His heart is very tough. His heart is very hard. His digestive system's really powerful. You're not going to mess with Leviathan, and I think that's really interesting. So here is a comment. It says, in the NIV it was written dismay, and one synonym of dismay is horrify. Okay, thank you. So Pharaoh's heart is the hardest of all kings. Yes, absolutely, and that's definitely a good way to apply that as well. In verse 30, sharp stones are under him. He spreads sharp-pointed things under the mire. He makes the deep to boil like a pot. He makes the sea like a pot of ointment. Now, he makes the deep boiling. Well, that would be because he's breathing fire, right? And you can imagine the flames are coming up and they're boiling as they're ascending. And he makes the sea like a pot of ointment. Now, I'm not sure what that would be, except that you would stir a pot of ointment, likely, and he may be circling. There are some whales, for example. If you look online in some of the BBC, I think videos is what it's called, and the BBC has put together videos where there will be whales that will gather together, and they'll start going in circles, and they'll blow air in circles. And the reason why they do that, so that circles are the bubbles will come up. They come up in a circle because what they're doing is they're actually surrounding the krill. The krill are little tiny creatures that big whales can eat, right? They're surrounding the krill with bubbles. And the reason why they're going around that krill and sending bubbles up in circles is so all the krill would come together because they're afraid of those bubbles around them. And what happens is the whale will come and grab all those krill coming up out of the water and then making a big splash, right? That's what you've seen. And those kind of things are making the sea to boil like a pot, right? So I wonder if the Leviathan had the same kind of strategy where he'd be able to maybe stir like ointment, the oil going in circles, blowing up things, making it boil like a pot, and then finally he catches whatever it is that is in the middle of that thing that he's going around in circles. So the whales could potentially help us understand how this Leviathan can fight or hunt, if you will. And it is interesting because when you're talking, like, for example, Wilson was bringing up earlier, the four-headed beast of Revelation chapter 13, or even the four different beasts over there in Daniel. You can see in Revelation 13, there's a leopard-like beast. What does the leopard do? The leopard will hunch back and wait for you to turn your eyes away from that leopard. And as soon as you're not looking at the leopard, it'll jump and grab the back of your neck, okay? Well, the same thing with a bear. A bear hunts differently, and then you have the lion that hunts differently because the lion will roar, scaring you that way, but on the other side of you is where all the lionesses are. And you're just like, you're totally caught. You're afraid of the loud voice. You turn around and you're in the mouth of a lion. And so there's different ways that these things hunt and different ways that they capture you. And you see all the characteristics of the different nations there in the four beasts described in Revelation 13. And I'm sure you're seeing the same thing here with, as brought up, Egypt and the way that they will hunt and do their kind of war-like activities. And so he makes the deep to boil like a pot. He makes the sea like a pot of ointment. And I would think that would be stirred. And the deep like a boiling pot would be kind of like what I was talking about with the whales, how they swim in circles. He makes a path to shine after him. And I know when you've got something in the water and you're moving it quickly, it's almost like a shining path that follows that thing that you're moving quickly. And so I think he can probably swim really fast. One would think the deep to be hoary. Now, hoary, what does that mean? Hoary is actually white, okay? Search for that word, and we're going to see that it's good old age. That means he's got white hair, good old age. His gray hairs or white hairs, gray hairs, that's hoary. That's what that means, okay? A hoary head. And so gray hair. That's the idea. Is behind this creature, he is moving so fast, he's got a path shining behind him. And the deep, you would think, was gray or white because he's moving so fast. Upon the earth there is none his like. There's nothing to describe like this Leviathan, who is made without fear. This creature doesn't fear anything. He beholds all high things. He is a king over all the children of pride. And so, okay, if you're applying this to Egypt, then he would be a king over the entire world. That was true as well. And so this creature is certainly one that is powerful and able to have victory over just about anything that is in its way. So it says, if Leviathan is a devil, he is the one that causes confusion or tumult. Yes, I agree. That is definitely true. And so God has given us, I think, an illustration of his power, his ability to control even the greatest things in the world. When everything is out of control, where do you turn? Do you turn to your friends? Do you turn to your wife? Do you turn to your businesses? Do you turn to your land? Do you turn to your food? Oh no. Those are the wrong directions. You go to God, who has the ability to overcome every single thing that is on the face of the earth. Matt and Nikki has said the water turns white when it is stirred, like behind a boat. Yes, that's right, like the hoary head. Good. And so God is our refuge. When we go to a point in our lives where we just don't have anything else, we're like, God, I don't know what to do. That's the perfect thing to say. God, I don't know what to do. God, being the first word out of your mouth, is exactly where you need to go. Sometimes people want to go to various locations, do various things, speak with different people. Well, that can be a good direction, but if it's not leading you to God, it's leading you in the wrong way. Job was doing right. He was praying to God. He was seeking God. He was trying to figure out what was going on as a righteous man. But even in the midst of all of what Job was doing that was right, he still needed to understand that God was his only refuge. If we can come to the point in our lives where at the time of trouble, everything is gone, everything is broken, nothing works, we're like living at the end of time where God, his Son, and all the angels are focusing in upon us. Satan and all his angels are focusing in upon us. All the nations around us are focusing in upon us. When we're there as the 144,000 with only stress and only loss, what will we be able to do? We will only be able to go to God. All earthliness will be cut off from us, and we will only have God. God is everything to us. God is omnipotent. we will put on the whole armor of God, as is mentioned in the comments, and we will be blessed during that time. So I want to commit myself right now before comments and questions. And you probably have a bunch of stuff to say about Leviathan as well, but why don't we commit ourselves to that God that controls everything right now, 100%, so that when in the time of trouble in the future, we will already have had that kind of preparation, going through the experiences that we need to have now before those things happen. Just like Daniel needed an experience with his friends before they went to Babylon, and that's why they were blessed, okay? So let's commit ourselves in prayer, asking God's blessings now. Our Father in heaven, I want to thank you that you've given us the opportunity to learn a little bit more about what it is the Bible is teaching. We want to thank you for blessing us with the understanding of the book of Job, at least in a big sense, that when everything is taken away from us, we will and should be able to trust you. We pray your mercy would continue, that we will be transformed into your likeness, that we will be able to understand just what it is that you have said and are saying, that our lives can be transformed, changed into your image, that we can be ready now, so that if we enter into a time of trouble before the rest of the world, in some plan that you have allowing us to go through it, we will be prepared. Thank you for this, and we do dedicate ourselves into your hands now. In Jesus' name, amen.
Pastor Daniel Mesa, I just only want to pick up the one that I put it, like NIV said that dismay, because I see in that what the sentence on that verse, it said that strength resides in his neck, and then it said dismay goes before him. So that I was thinking that maybe the horrified, people it's go before him or something, that people afraid of him.
Okay.
That's my understanding. I may be wrong.
Yeah, sure.
Please.
That's good. Thank you.
I was just studying Leviathan before, and this creature seems to be able to fly too, like a fiery serpent, fiery flying serpent. I've seen it on one instances, and it's like the lion that has wings as well. That's a lion with a wing as well. And I just want to share like a riddle regarding an animal. When Samson told his brethren, out of the eater came forth meat, out of the strong came forth sweet. And Samson went on to explain to the people that the eater was a lion and something sweet was honey. But that was a prophecy concerning his own life. He was the lion. And when he died, something sweet came forth. And who is stronger than the lion from the tribe of Judah, which is Jesus?
Okay.
And when he died, came forth the sweetness of the gospel. So I think the animals play a very symbolic way of looking at the rest of the Bible.
Amen.
That's all.
Yeah, that's good. That was nice. I hadn't seen the lion and the honey like that before, but I like it.